This lecture video is going to look at the last organs that are going to hold our food or our chyme, which is the large intestines, the rectum, and the anus. The large intestines is called large intestines because of its large diameter compared to the small intestines. It has the 4 layers we've talked about in all of these different structures, the mucosa, submucosa, muscularis externa, and the serosa. However, just like in the stomach and the esophagus, there are some differences or adaptations in these tissues. First of all, the large intestines does not have the villi or the circular folds that the small intestine does, and it's going to have more mucosa cells in it than the small intestines. It is divided into the cecum, which is down here, the colon, which we divide into ascending, transverse, descending, and sigmoid, and then the rectum and the anus. The large intestines is going to begin at the ileocecal valve, which is going to connect the ileum of the small intestines to the cecum of the large intestines. And again, its function, reabsorb the water, free some vitamins from the chyme, and then store the feces. Looking specifically at the starting point of the cecum, this is going to be an expanded pouch where chyme is going to enter into through the ileocecal valve, and its function is to basically start the compaction process of that undigested food of the chyme that's still remaining. The appendix is located right here on the posterior-medial side, and it contains some lymphatic tissue, so it plays a role in immune response. Sometimes it can get infected and inflamed, which is what is called appendicitis. Although it does play a role in some immune response, typically it's considered a vestigial organ, meaning that there's really no known function to it. It's not necessary to our ability to survive. Whoops. Once the cecum enters into the food exits the cecum, we're going to get into the ascending colon, which is going to be going up. Then we'll go into the transverse colon, across, the descending colon, which goes down, and the sigmoid colon, which is going to be this S-shaped structure right here. This will then lead down into the rectum. The rectum is an expandable organ for storing our feces. The anal canal is the last portion, which is going to contain longitudinal anal columns in it, and 2 different sphincters which will help in the release or defecation process. Internal sphincter is made of smooth muscle of the muscularis externa. It's under ANS control because it is smooth muscle. So basically it's under involuntary control, and the external anal sphincter is made of skeletal muscle, and it's under voluntary control, so that when you need to use the bathroom, you can control that process. Large intestines histology, like I said, there's no circular folds. So here you can see in this picture, there's no villi. The mucosa is simple columnar epithelium. Again, because simple, we still are absorbing things, water and vitamins through there, so we want it to be not layered tissue, simple tissue. And then it's made mostly of enterocytes and goblet cells. Remember, goblet cells are producing all of that mucus. There's still a lot of mucus production that's occurring. And then the enterocytes. So again, looking at this picture, you can see all of these big white blobs here are goblet cells. You can see those really well in the large intestines. No villi, no microvilli. No circular folds, no villi, no microvilli. Movement through the large intestines is very slow, and that's because we want it to be able to absorb all of the water out of the remaining chyme, as much as water as we can. If this process is hindered in any way so that water isn't removed, then we have the unfortunate symptom of diarrhea, which would make sense, right? Water isn't being absorbed out of there. And vice versa, if too much water is reabsorbed, then we would have constipation. There is very strong peristaltic contractions to move the fecal matter through the large intestines. Now, this is different than the small, where those contractions were a lot weaker. It occurs about 3 to 4 times a day, and it's going to be triggered, these powerful contractions, by the distension of the stomach, or what's called the gastrocolic reflex. So basically, it's the stomach stretching is going to then allow the stimulation of these powerful peristaltic contractions. Chemical digestion. A lot of water is going to be absorbed out of the large intestines into the body. So of the 150 milliliter of chyme that enters the cecum per day, 1,300 milliliters are going to end up being reabsorbed. We also are going to reabsorb bile salts, so they will enter the hepatic portal circulation and return to the liver. Bacteria in the colon is going to make 3 key vitamins: vitamin K, which we need to help our blood clot, biotin, which helps us break down glucose, and vitamin B5, which is required to make several of our neurotransmitters and some of our steroid hormones. So very, very important in terms of vitamin production. Bacteria that is located in the large intestines can also convert bilirubin into absorbable forms and non-absorbable forms. So the absorbable forms are eliminated in urine, which is what gives our urine its yellow color. And then non-absorbable forms will remain in the feces, giving it its brown color. So that's all from bilirubin. If you were born and you were jaundiced, this is a build-up of bilirubin. So your babies who are jaundiced have really yellow-looking skin, and they have to put them under a light in order to try and break up that bilirubin that it's being produced. So often can be indicative of a liver disorder. Some of the organic waste that's absorbed, first of all, bacterial action will break down peptides, so those remaining parts of proteins. It will turn them into ammonia, nitrogenous compounds, and hydrogen sulfide, which again we're going to end up getting rid of. Ammonia and other toxins absorbed, and the liver will convert them into harmless forms that our kidneys will eliminate through usually through urine. So urea would be an example of this. And then indigestible carbohydrates are going to provide nutrient sources for bacteria, which will then be what causes gas to occur and then be released. The defecation reflex involves 2 feedback loops, a short loop and a long loop. In the short loop, the stretch receptors in the rectal wall will stimulate peristalsis, and it will move feces towards the anus, and it will stretch out that rectum. And then the long loop is going to be stimulated by the parasympathetic reflex, and it is going to trigger involuntary relaxation of that internal sphincter, which is then going to lead us to feel like we need to use the restroom, and then we will consciously relax that external sphincter. So that's basically how the defecation reflex works.